Hello, everyone. Welcome to our August coaching call. So we've got a really nice group here today, and we've got a special guest, Jason Sikes. Jason and I, have known each other since we were, I think, 15, 16 years old. We are besties for a long, long time now. So it's really cool that Jason could be here, because when I started The Working Artist, I asked Jason if he would create a bonus video for working artists on branding and websites. And it is still one of the most popular parts of The Working Artist. And both Jason and I rewatched it today, and it's amazing that it's still right on point. So Jason agreed to come back to talk to us some more and answer your questions about how websites and branding work. Welcome, Jason. Yay. Woo, woo, woo. Jason's company is called Village Green Studios, and we will definitely talk more about that as we get into things. And I'm going to introduce Jason Sikes. There he is, the man. He's going to be my co-host for this. Jason and I met yesterday, and we started talking about all things websites, and we are very much on the same page that websites are very important for artists. Social media ain't going to cut it. You want to think about your website as your portfolio. Jason, what are some of the other benefits for artists to have a website?
When I started doing web design in about the year 2001, like the movie Space Odyssey, it was websites were just beginning to be a thing popularly. And it was an effort to convince a lot of people that they needed one. Of course, now it's easier to convince them, but back then, and I think I even mentioned this in the video I did, I would ask people, what's more important, a business card or a website? And at that time, almost everyone said business card. And I would say wrong. And they wouldn't believe me until about 3 years later, and then everyone believed me. So it's important not just for artists to have a website, it's important for anyone with a business at all to have a website, because it is your business card. It is where you can send people so they get an idea of who you are, what you do, and how to contact you. So at a bare minimum, you need to have at least that, because how often are you in a place where you actually exchange a business card these days? Not as nearly as often as it used to be. Things are done so virtually that you're just able to say, hey, check me out on my website. And if you do have a business card, you definitely have to have your website on it. So as far as an artist goes, I guess I would say it was probably even more important than many businesses, because it's a visual medium. You are making and creating visual things. You're making visual art. And what better way to let people know what kind of art you make and what it looks like than to actually show them a picture? They say a picture speaks 1,000 words, and it certainly does. I see so many websites, and actually websites by artists, where the artists use up so much of their space with text. And yes, it's nice to know who you are, what your brief biography is. Maybe you have an artist statement. But if you get too verbose with that sort of thing, you're going to lose people. And these days, more than ever, short attention span theater is at a peak. So again, even more important to have a website, because it's a visual medium, more so than a reading medium. And there are so many different levels of a website you can have. And I know that there's a stereotype, I guess, of the starving artist. And my experience in doing artist websites is, yes, that's kind of true. There are a lot of artists, and not just fine artists, but all of that don't have a lot of money, and they don't have a lot of money to spend on marketing. And then on the other hand, one of my biggest clients, just money-wise, is an artist that came through Krista to me. And it's one of my favorite sites that I've done. Light Painting by Jeff Moresh, I believe is the site. Wait, I have it called it. Lightpaintingjeffmoresh.com. But just because you don't have a lot of money doesn't mean you can't have a website. You can have a very basic website as a starter website. Am I going too fast, Krista? Am I skipping stuff?
You're not skipping stuff, but I want to give them, I want them to learn a little bit about your story too,
Oh,
because
sure.
I mean, you're absolutely right. Every artist needs a website, and there are endless benefits to having a website. Some of them, you know, you just never know who will stumble upon you, or what people are looking for when they're looking for you. But what I wanted to say about Jason that makes him different is I've met a lot of web guys, right, and gals, and they seem to be working a lot in their head. They're really techie, and they don't always listen. They don't always get it. And Jason is an artist himself. In fact, Jason's one of the first artists I knew when we were in college. You studied radio, TV, film, right, Jason? But you were always making art. Even in high school, you were making art.
That was my minor, was in fine art.
Your minor was, didn't you take a painting class with Ed Paschke?
Ed Paschke wanted me to switch my major to art when I was doing
Ah,
art there. And at the time I was like, no, I'd rather make money. So I kept it as a minor.
okay, but you never stopped
Later on,
making
I
art.
did. Later on, I did make money with my art, and still do to a degree.
Yeah, yeah. So you chose, you know, not everyone can make a living to the level to which they desire from fine art. It depends where you live, it depends on your work, it depends how much you want to invest in all of that. But having a creative career like me with the working artist, you know, I know a lot of you teach, and do other creative jobs. And so Jason, you said you started the website design because it was a way to blend your technical savvy with your eye, right? Your creative eye.
Yeah, I wove my way into to web design. If you look at my career path, it looks scattershot, but in my head, it's not. It's almost a direct line. I wanted to be an artist, and if I couldn't get right out of college and make a living being an artist, I decided I wanted to work in the arts. So I got a job with the Chicago Office of Fine Arts, which didn't pay a lot. It was an internship actually at first, and then it turned into a job where I was helping to set up speakers, speaking about art, helping to set up gallery exhibitions. I was so young that mostly what I was doing was hanging art for exhibitions, but that was fine. And then I moved. I was living in Chicago at the time, and it'd be my seventh winter. And for a kid that grew up in Arizona, that was 7 winters too many. Moved back to Arizona, still wanting to stay in the arts. And I got a job that to this day is, I'm tearing up even thinking about it, is my favorite job that I've ever had in my life. Also, the lowest paid job. I was the artistic director for an art space in Phoenix called Movimiento Artístico del Rio Salado. And one of the other artist members is here with us today. Hi, Joe Ray,
Hey, Joe Ray. Joe Ray was part of that.
Art of Mars.
Yeah.
And it was such an amazing experience because, yes, I didn't get paid a lot, but I got paid enough to make a living. And I was young, so I didn't have, kids and all that sort of stuff to help to pay for, to provide for. And in that environment, I was also became a member of the art space. So I was an artist and the artistic director at the same time. It was just a wonderful example of how I could be an artist and make a living in that community at the same time. I did get my degree in radio, TV, film. So at a certain point when I needed to make more money, I thought, well, I'm going to go work in television in Hollywood and make lots of money and make TV shows and movies. And so went to Los Angeles. I started at a network that had only been 2 weeks old at that time, E Entertainment Television. Prior to being E, it was movie something. I don't know if there are people, it looks like there are people here of my age. You might remember the 1-800 movie line where you would call and they say, these are the movies that are playing in your area. This was that cable channel, and someone came along and said, no, we're going to make it into E. So, and it was fun because again, I was to be around creative people, not necessarily fine artists, but creative, well, other kinds of fine artists, right? Actors and writers. And it was also a great example of taking my passion to be creative and surrounding myself with creative people. And I was in marketing. And that was a big deal for me because I realized that marketing is creative, but it's strategic creativity. So I could take my creative mind and I could apply strategy to it. My dad was an MIT graduate, so I have that math, science, logic in my brain as well. So I was able to direct it into marketing. And then I went to Fox, and then in marketing, and then I became director of development for alternative programming at Fox. And the higher I got up, the more miserable I was because the less creative it was and the more about shaking hands it was. And I didn't like that. I left for about a year, had a partner. We sold a pilot to Buena Vista Television. And that was great fun. And that was super creative. I got paid a heck ton of a lot of money for 6 weeks of work, just pretty much being creative 99% of that time. Loved it, loved it, loved it. And then cable started to eat into the television business. Money started going down, and now you've got the internet and all of that. So the ability to make a living doing what I was doing. Actually, at the end of that year, I would pitch a TV show, and the studio would say, "Hey, we really want to be in business with you. How much money do you have to pitch in on making a pilot?" And I'm like, "That's not how I thought it worked, but I guess it does now." So I taught myself graphic design and web design, and that's how I was able to maintain my desire to be creative and make a living. And then I launched Village Green Studios in 2001, and I am extremely proud that I've been able to not work for the man, so to speak, for 21, 23, 24 years. So that's my story there. And I'm still making art, but I fell into a niche of doing websites for voiceover artists because I tried to be one myself, only to find out that I was horrible. But the teacher needed somebody to do graphic design for the artist demos that were on CDs at the time. And she said, "Do you know anybody to do that?" And I said, "Oh, I do that." I owned Photoshop. So I quickly taught myself Photoshop and cranked out some examples of other demos that I had done. So I still get to, and so I've done more than voiceover artists. I've done fine artists. I've done actors. I've done this. In fact, the next launch of my website is going to not focus on voiceover artists only. It's going to have different sections of different kind of artists because I love working with artists. I love working with other creative people.
Why?
That's my story.
Why do you love working with creative people?
They understand the creative process by and large. So it's what change usually happens. One, it becomes collaborative, which I love. I'll have ideas and then I'll bounce off ideas. And it's so nice to be able to have another creative mind be able to say, "Well, what about this? What about this? What about this?" And then I can bring a strategic mind to it and say, "I like that, but your art is dark and mysterious, but I don't think anybody cares that you're a fan of pugs. So why are we putting pictures of dogs anyways? And we don't want to do that." But most of the time it's either collaborative or they appreciate the creative process and know that they know what they don't know, which is they don't know how to do a website. So they're very open to my process and me bringing what I do and my team to what they do. When I work with more traditional business people, they don't tend to understand the value of the creativity as much. And that can be tough. They don't understand when I say it's when they just say, "Oh, my logo bigger." It's like, well, yes, and. So that's mostly fun. And they're, by and large, they're just nicer, warmer people.
Right.
Yeah.
There are people.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you took that job at Mars, I went to all the openings, and that was my introduction to the local arts community too. And I feel still connected to it to this day, especially when I go back. So it's been a fun ride, hasn't it, Jason?
Oh, you and I had a great ride together.
Yeah.
And my ride and my career, with the ups and downs, there's always been a creative component to it.
Mhm.
And I value.
Yeah. And it's interesting what you said about strategy, because my dad was a computer programmer before there were really computers, but he had that brain too. So I think you know, kids who can have the creative brain and a strategic brain at the same time have a real leg up in terms of the marketing and branding. Although we talk about that and marketing and branding, we tend to get, when I work with artists, it's really easy to get stuck in your head because there's so many questions and there's so many decisions and everything feels like super loaded. And I really think you and I talked about this yesterday, that I think it's important to start in your heart instead, because that's where the best branding is. It's not something you're just going to think up. It's something you already are, right? So what is branding?
That you mentioned the heart when it comes to branding is, I think, terrific, especially when it comes to an artist website. Um, because a brand, more than anything else, is feeling. It's about feeling. The word branding comes from ranchers because they would brand their cattle and they would brand them literally with an image and it marked their property as theirs. This is mine. This is who I am. This is me. So it started as just sort of a symbol. But when it comes to the world of marketing outside of cattle, it's more. A lot of people will say, well, isn't it a logo? Isn't it a slogan? Isn't it the colors that I use? Isn't it a website? Isn't it the font that I use? And yes and no. No, it's not any of those things individually, but it is all of those things collectively, because all of those things should come together in a way that gives the person experiencing those things a certain impression, a certain feeling about who you are, what you do, and in this case, what your art is, and not so much what your art is about, because that'd be more of an artist statement kind of thing, but how your art feels. So it in an artist website, your brand should, I think I say something like this in the video, your brand should be the on the basketball court that leads to your art making the slam dunk. Your brand should not be the focus of your website. It should not really be the focus of anything. Rather, it should be the assist that allows your product, in this case, your art, make the slam dunk. So it should support all of that. Your brand, your website, your logo should all feel your art feels. Not necessarily look like, yes and no. It's simpler than that visually, but that's the idea.
I like that. I think Joe wrote something in the chat. Let me see if I can find it. Branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room.
Yes, yes. Like we all have, I say this in the video too. I mentioned Coca-Cola and Pepsi because that's what I learned when I was in advertising school briefly. You have a different feeling about Coke that you do as Pepsi. And when you talk about it with a friend, were to talk about it with a friend, you would describe it in ways that are appropriate, that resemble the brand. And when it comes to an art or artist, Joe's right. It's what you would say if you were talking about another artist or another artist's work.
Yeah, the kind of language you would use.
It's the kind of language you use. It's the feeling you try to convey.
Right. So do you agree with me when I say that the most important real estate on an artist's website is what they call above the fold?
Yes, it's also called the hero image these days.
Ooh,
That's pretty much
okay. Can you tell what that is?
it's the first thing that people see when they come to your website. You go to a website, opens up, boom, that's the hero image. And above the fold, it's probably a term that'll go out of at a certain point, because I'm not sure people above the fold refers to a newspaper. It's the image you see
Mm,
above the fold of the newspaper when you flip it. That's where it comes from. But it's the first impression. And that first impression needs to be big, it needs to be bold. It should not be complicated. It should be immediately impactful. And in the
right.
case of a fine artist, it's probably a piece of art.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a really great thing if it was a piece of art. I
And
look at a lot of,
it doesn't need to just be a piece of art. It could be the piece of art that's in the background with things over it, because you're not necessarily trying to get everybody to look at your art like they would in a museum, if that makes sense. Do you want to have a gallery? Do you want to have a portfolio? Yes. But the above the fold hero image is that and more. So it's okay if you have something over it, like you could maybe have your artist statement over it, or you might actually even have your a portfolio gallery over it, and that background is a piece of your own art. In fact, I think I did on Jeff's site on the light painting with Jeff. Actually I have it up here. Let me see. I have several pieces of his art that actually, can I share my screen?
I think so. Let's try it.
Advanced sharing options, multiple options. No, I don't. You have not given me the permission. Oh my God. What is happening? Am I sharing?
Your co-host, you should be sharing. You're not sharing. Oops, I don't know how to make you share.
Oh, wait. I can my desktop.
There you go.
Am I sharing now?
You are sharing now.
All right,
Thanks.
here's Jeff's site. And his hero, you can probably see me with my mouse. Jeff's hero image is right here.
Yeah.
This is what people see when they come to the website. And this is his art in a slideshow. And the slideshow goes, you might say too fast. I say it goes just right, because it's not slow enough where you're really super focused on it and you get lost in it, but it's long enough that you get an impression of what his art is like. And at the same time, I have over here the title of the piece and a learn more.
Fantastic.
And then down here, and then you go to learn more about this specific piece. There's a description, and then there's prices, and so that was all done through the hero image. The above the fold image, I have grabbed them and hopefully grabbed the viewer enough that they want to explore. Maybe a particular piece like up here, or maybe they want to scroll down and look at the galleries. Jeff's site is a pretty advanced site. It's not one page less expensive site. But on a single one page site, you can do a similar thing. And this is Janet Stroh's site, which is just one page. So much less expensive than Jeff's site, but it still is branded her. And what I did in this, my team did this case, is took a piece of hers and took the background of a piece of hers and used it literally as the background. And then I cut out pieces of that same piece of art and put them in the foreground, so it rides over the top of the content. So now you're sort of engrossed in her world, almost literally brought into her world with a foreground and a background.
And even though this is one page, if you were to hit that hamburger on the right side with the table of contents, how does that work?
Boom. And
Yeah.
here, this all goes down to different sections.
Nice.
And of course, contact, which if I were to give probably the piece of advice I give more often than not to almost anyone that's done their own website or had somebody do their website is make it frickin' easy for people to you.
Yes.
So many people hide their contact information. It's like, what is wrong with you? It should be like in the menu. In this case, it's right at the bottom of the page. It's just make it easy.
Right. It shouldn't be a secret.
All right. Am I back now? Yes.
Yeah, that was great. And I loved how, I think it's really important that there's not, above the fold especially, I'm going to keep using that term because I'm old school, but the hero, that first thing you see should not be a whole bunch of text.
Oh,
Just shouldn't be.
More than ever, people will click away from that. It's
Yeah.
always a way to agree, but now attention span is lower.
Anxiety is higher when we're online. We don't want to read. We just really don't. So keep it as simple as possible.
And again, it goes back to the heart thing that Krista said. It's about feeling. The brand is about feeling. And guess what? Your art is probably about feeling. People look at your art and they have a feeling. And your website should have that feeling. You shouldn't have to read about that feeling. That makes sense. Now, of course, there is some text that's still important. Absolutely. But oh man, so many websites, like 3, 4, 5 paragraphs on the home page. Like, what are you doing? People are boom, 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 out of here, out of here, out of here, out of here.
And the other thing that I liked about Jeff's site is the navigation was super simple. Well, same with Janet's site too. You don't want to give them too many choices. You want to pretty much lay it out where they can go, where they should go, how to follow it. Jeff's got the gallery page right there on the home page, And I don't like more than 5, at the very most, menu items up top. You can have some drop downs, but for the love of all things holy, don't have, 27 items in a drop down because people will bail. Do you agree,
Yeah,
Jason?
absolutely. That's another thing that people do. And it kind of relates to something that's in the video when I talk about bells and whistles. And that is, in general, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And when it comes to navigation, so easy to want to offer multiple options to people about, well, check this out, we'll check this out, we'll check this out. And it goes back to the short attention span theater thing. No, don't give them the options. Don't give them too many ways to do the same thing, unless it makes sense. But that's a discussion that's muddy. In general, you want to be to the point, quick, offer them what they need, and no more. My wife, social media marketing, and one of the things that she says to her students is a confused mind does not buy. So you don't want to confuse people. And that goes into the thing in the video about bells and whistles, which I don't think is as bad these days as it used to be. I still see it. But back in the day when it first became possible to have animation and forced audio and video starts on its own. Anything that was like whiz bang wow was something that web designers would do because they like to exercise their technological creativity, not realizing that you're just that you're just freaking, that you're just freaking people out. We'll fix that in post.
I've got people.
Because you do too much of that stuff, you're taking people's eyes off the ball. And then it goes back to the video again about all of this branding. Everything is an assist. It's not the focus. It's an assist. When you get into doing the whiz bang stuff, you are no longer assisting. You're now overwhelming the purpose of what you were trying to do. And text does that in a similar but different way. You're taking the viewer's eye off the ball by giving them too much to read. Give them what they need and not much more.
I've read that the most visited page on a website is the About page. Is that true? Do you know?
I don't know if that's true. I would think that the most visited page would be the home page.
Well,
But
yeah.
from there,
From there, yeah.
I don't know about that. I can see that, but I don't know.
And I know it's true for artists
I don't.
specifically.
I think well, what I was going to say is I think it depends on what the website is selling.
Mm.
If it's a plumber's site, I think the most visited page would be services or pricing. On an artist website, I would think it would be portfolio.
Yeah. What I liked about the site you showed too was that you had these galleries, and I've read statistics about artist websites. And when there is a gallery on the home page, on the front page, those seem to do best because people don't have to look about where to go and your work is already categorized for them. You want people, imagine, okay, remember I always say in The Working Artist that your website is not a museum to you. It's not everything you've ever done since high school. You've really got to think of it as your portfolio. So think about who you're trying to attract to your website and how you're attracting them. If you're trying to get gallery representation, for example, and you're really courting the galleries, build your website with that viewer in mind and think about how you want them to look at your website. Lay out the breadcrumbs for them so that it makes sense, so that it's intuitive. And don't overwhelm them. If someone was coming to my studio to look at work, I would prepare a presentation that would be about 20-25 minutes long. I wouldn't show them art for 3 hours until they were, dying to get out of the room. You want to keep it really focused. Jason, am I?
You couldn't be more wrong. That's ridiculous. No, you are absolutely right. It's part of the strategy in building marketing and websites is to you have old school marketing back in the days, and probably still today. You have your primary audience, you have a secondary audience, and you have a tertiary audience. And you always put focus on the primary audience. So Chris is completely when she talks about that. If you are looking to get represented, that is what that's the audience your website should be about. If you're interested in trying to sell your art online, completely different audience. Well, pretty much a different audience, and also a different website, and probably a slightly more advanced website, because you want to be able to possibly include online stability that's transactional and done virtually. That doesn't mean you have to have that. You can still sell just through your contact page. But again, very, very different audiences. So it's important to keep that in mind. But then you also do have you possibly do have a secondary audience. So you don't want to completely alienate them either. So if you're looking for gallery representation, you don't want to have on your homepage, hey, galleries, would you like to represent me? You don't necessarily want to come out and say it. And again, that comes to strategic branding and positioning and everything that's done in all of your materials. But there are ways to do that without coming right out and saying it. But yes, audience, very, very important.
Great.
And
Thanks.
have one.
Yeah, absolutely. We had some, I'm sure we're going to have questions from the group, but one of the questions I got was from Bruce, and he was asking about, with all of the website templates and services, how do you find a server that's going to help your work stand out versus being really difficult to find? So I think there's a misunderstanding there. Your website isn't responsible for driving your traffic, correct?
Correct. Can it help to drive traffic to your website? Search engine optimization, all of those things, yes. Can that happen instantly? No. There used to be places out there that would do what's called black hat marketing, and they would help to get you found in Google searches, possibly even on the first page, like right away. But the way they did it was, it's not technically illegal, but it's sort of illegal in the universe of search engines. So you get caught doing that, you could get banned from Google at all. And there are a lot of people that will come to me and say, how do I get on the first page? How do I get on the first page of a search? There are some things that you can do, and there's some things that you can't do. And I'm going to answer both the questions that we thought this question was about. But this is about what I'm talking about now is getting to the discovery part. If your name is John Harris and you're an artist in Idaho, you're a photographer in Idaho that specializes in unique wedding photography. If I can make it, any decent web designer should be able to make it that says John Harris, wedding photography, and then add Idaho. Guess what? You're going to show up on the searches. So the more narrow the search, the more likely you are to show up on the front page. If someone just puts in wedding photography, is John Harris in Idaho going to show up on that first page? No. Is he going to be on page 2, 3, 4, 5? No, he's probably going to be on page 200, unless he's well known already, in which case, so that goes to marketing yourself outside of just your website. Now, are there ways to drive traffic to your website that you can do on your own? Yes, there are. One of those is social media. A lot of people, artists, other business owners will use their social media page as their web page. I see that a lot. Does it help? They're better doing that than nothing. I will say that. But they're better having a website than having just a social media presence. Because when you're on social media, what are you doing? You're scrolling, you're looking through things, you're doing this. So if somebody finds you, they might scroll a little bit, they might look on your page, and then they're going to very likely quickly go to the next. Again, my wonderful wife does social media marketing. Another thing that she says, which I love, when it comes to marketing online, social media, the purpose of, she calls this the dirty secret of social media. The purpose of social media is to get people off of social media. So the purpose of your web page, be it Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, whatever it is, your goal on that page is to get them off that page and to your website. It's a path to your destination. Your destination is your website. because once they're there, they are there. They're much less likely to leave because there's not things scrolling up the side. There's not a little alert going on up in the corner. There's not someone that just gave you a chat notification. They're on your website. So you've got their focus and you capture them with that home image, that hero image, the above the fold image. Now you've got them for a bit. If you've got them with that, you've got them for a little bit. Now they're exploring around in there. So that's one way to drive traffic to your website. Is that going to help in your search engine optimization? A little bit. It might help to get them people to your social page. It depends on how they got there. The goal to be found high up in search rankings is tremendously overstated. It is much less important now than it used to be, and it's much harder now than it used to be. So if you're going to put too much focus on trying to be found with a Google search, you are likely wasting 99% of that time when you have opportunities to get people to your site the other way. Also on your website, as far as social media goes, have some share buttons. You've got a piece that people are looking at, they really like, maybe they will share it on their social media. And usually those shares will come with, if you got a good web designer, will come with a way for people that see the share to go back to that website. And again, I see people of my age era. You might remember a commercial, God, I think it was for Prel shampoo. No, Prel was the plastic bottle. What was it? It was one that says that if you like the shampoo, share it with someone, and then they'll share it with someone, and they'll share it with two people, and they'll share it with people, and so on and so on and so on. And then you see the picture of the shampoo, like filling the screen. Same thing. You have a website with art that people like and give them a way to share it, whether it's social media or just be able to share a link. You can do that too to your website with someone. Now you are people to come and check out your website. Much better ways to get traffic than just focus on search engine optimization. And also your website on your business card. And anytime you're on social or in a virtual meeting, not like this one, because we will ban you if you do this, add your website if appropriate. And then people, and then it's an easy and often overlooked way to get exposure. Is your
Yeah,
web.
that's great. That's great. Will Jones posted a question, and I'm wondering, Will, if you want to unmute yourself and ask it, because Will is new to the Working Artist. This is his first Working Artist gathering. Welcome. And he was also in Arizona as an artist back in the day.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, so you get your, and you have, or you could have a website that you could sell your artwork on, which is, better to have, because personally, I can't afford to have manage two different websites. So is one better than the other? Or?
In this case, it absolutely is better to just have one if you want to do both. And that's because both are related. Your art and buying your art are all about your art. I go back again to the guy who literally loved pugs and wanted to include pugs on his website. It's not quite the same argument, but it is. I'll say, if you're a plumber and you're an artist, do you want to have one site that is about your plumbing business and your art business? Probably not, unless your art is about plumbing and includes pictures of toilets being plunged or whatever, then maybe. But if they're not related, then again, confused mind doesn't buy. But when it comes to viewing your art and buying your art, they're absolutely related. They should be on the one side. It should be a one-stop shop. But again, the focus is your art. So your hero image, your homepage should be about capturing people with what your art looks like. But if you're going to sell it from your website, then an easy way, like on Jeff's site, more information, click. Now you're on a sales page. Now you're on a sales page for that piece. So from there, you can pick out a frame and you can pick out a size and blah, 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 and you buy. So the answer is one site in this case. Yes.
Can I add one more question?
Sure.
To this? So in talking to, I'm probably your generation, if not older, but talking to.
Are you also in your early 30s?
Well, I'm 27.
Oh, okay.
Times 3. Anyways, talking to a lot of the young people when I'm at events and stuff like that. And, no one ever says, go to my website. They go Instagram. It's all Instagram. It's all, oh, can just give me your phone. Just tap your phone against mine. You get my business card. I mean, it's no, don't give me no paper. Don't give me. So in that scenario, is it what's more better to have, an Instagram, a strong, or a website?
Great, 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 great question. And it kind of also goes back to who you're building your website for, and that is know your audience. So you just said when you're at events where there's lots of young people, right?
Yes.
What are these events? Why are you at these events? Are they art events?
Some of them are art events. I'm in Cincinnati. There's a lot of art things happening, so I go to a lot of those. I talk to, I see, see a young photographer. I go chat him up because I'm a chatter,
Sure.
and you're sharing work, and and I just noticed that they just never go, hey, go to my website, or they're
All
like
right.
Instagram.
Sure. People that are at these events, are they part of your audience? Because what is your goal? Is your sell? Are these young people you think might actually buy your art?
I would say are people that are in position to move me in
Okay.
getting my artwork out there. Will be I've got some work showing out of a local museum here, and the curator. I mean, I'm gonna say she might be 27. I mean,
Gotcha.
and shared me her artwork, and just like she said, "Here's my Instagram." She don't go look at a web. Here's my Instagram. Look at my work. Boom.
So
So
this audience benefit you in some way. Great.
yes.
So now you need to be able to speak to this audience in their language in a situation like this, because I want to know your Instagram. So you need to have an Instagram page if this audience is important to you. Do you want to spend more time having a great Instagram page than a website page? No, because again, get people off of social media, because your goal is, even in this case, they come to your Instagram page, and your Instagram, I'm not saying it should be crappy. Of course it should be good. And it's a very visual social media platform. So you have an opportunity to show your art there and also to tell a little bit about yourself. But on that Instagram page of yours, absolutely have a way for people to go to your website. Because then once they're on your website, I don't want to say they're trapped. I'll say they are
They're
focused.
yours.
Yes, much better term. But the Instagram can serve that, especially if you're going to be at events with people that are younger and use Instagram. Then absolutely have an Instagram account. That's good.
Yeah.
That's between great, and how much time you have to put it together.
There's a couple other things I want to say about that is that we don't want Mark Zuckerberg to own our web presence. Instagram, Facebook, these things tend to come and go, and they do weird things with our images too. So by having your own website, you own that. That's yours. And also that gives you the opportunity to capture someone's email address, which you add to your mailing list, which is gold. Remember, I've talked about that a lot in The Working Artist. You really want to build up your email list, and you can't do that from Instagram. Remember, people on Instagram are scrolling with their thumb. So, oops, look. So yeah, that's what I think about Instagram.
Yeah, speaking of mailing lists, I have a lot of clients that on their website include something that's called an ethical bribe. And that is, you offer something free to someone in exchange for their email address. In the case of an artist, it might be a virtual computer background of a piece of your art that they could use on their computer, just off the top of my head. And people tend to love free things. So, or maybe it's a list of if you're an artist, also 10 tips, or I'm just spinning stuff off the top of my head. But the idea is you give them something easy and free, and they will give you an email quickly. A lot of times you can just say, sign up for my newsletter, and they will you'll get them then. And then you have to do a newsletter every so often. And then what else I was going to say about
Facebook owning your stuff?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, you Facebook all of them, especially Facebook, they change their algorithm often monthly. And I was selling, I started an online business selling t-shirts that were kind of loosely based on my art. Check it out, buy some t-shirt. And I had a store on Facebook. And about 3 months in, I got banned for some reason I didn't quite understand. I loosely understood it. I would have images of popular cartoon comic book characters, but I presented them in a muerto kind of way. Those people that know about Dia de los Muertos, that sort of. So in a fun kind of way. So it was original art, but because it resembled this, Facebook was like, no, 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 no. So I had to go through and argue it with them and blah, 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 blah. Now, since I had a website that also sold, I'm still okay. I'm still selling my stuff because I own that domain. I own that website. And this speaks to tangentially social media. You own your website. You should own your presence on all social media, whether you're using it or not, because who knows what's going to become big or what's going to go away next. And that is, if you are Bob Smith artist, then on Facebook, you want, that needs your @ it needs to be your destination, Facebook/Bob Smith artist. And ideally, you have that same @ on everything so that you could just say to somebody @Bob Smith artist. And then if they did that on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, on blah, and blah, and blah, and blah, and blah, it's all the same, which is also part of marketing, which is the word consistency. Consistency is important. You want to be just about the same everywhere. Same look, same feel, same font, same colors, same @ same name, same everything. It's not always possible, but come as close as you can.
That's really good advice. Thanks. We've got a lot of questions. I'm gonna quickly take Mary Beth's question. And can you put in the chat, Jason, the website for your t-shirt page? Is it live?
It is. Hold on.
Okay. But Mary Beth asked about how do you drive people from social media to your website? And I'll just take that question because you can do it with your ethical bribe. You know, like I sometimes, oh, cool. Oh, you're sharing it.
Of course. The people want to know. Yeah, so I got in trouble for having, Scooby-Doo and Shaggy, even though they've got their faces are skulls. And that's supposed to be Elvis. I got in trouble with Facebook. I argued it successfully, but it was a pain in the ass. And that can happen on social media, especially the bigger ones. You can find yourself in trouble for like nothing at all, it seems like.
Yeah. And it's true. And it's really hard to get a person
Almost impossible.
to get some kind of help. So the ethical bribe, getting people from social media to your website. I use ethical bribes. I create free content that, they have to join my email list in order to sign up, or I send out inspiration. You might have seen my inspirational quotes where I drive traffic to my website. I do all kinds of things. What I don't do is every time I post, I don't tell them to go to my website. I give, and maybe a week I share something that I say, if you want it, or if this inspires you, go to my website. And then there's a reason there to go there.
That is an excellent point. Thank you for bringing it up. Have I mentioned my wife lately? Social media marketing?
That's exciting because it's the first time I've heard you say my wife, because you're a newlywed. So that's pretty cool.
This is another thing she teaches. I hope I'm not giving away all of her secrets because that's what she does for a living.
Go on.
But she has, when it comes to social media, what she calls the 75-25 rule. And that means 75% of your content should not be buy my stuff. It should be, because it's a social platforms, be talking a little bit about yourself or your ideas about things, all sort of related to your brand, but not buy my stuff. And then 25% of it can be, and you don't want to say buy my stuff directly, but you know what I'm saying? It might be, hey, I'm having a special on this, or I have a new piece, you should check it out, or blah, 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 to what Krista was just saying, what she does on her own website. 75-25.
75-25. Juanita had a good question. Juanita, do you want to unmute yourself and ask yourself?
Yeah. So, Jason, what do you think about having if you have two styles of painting, for example, plein air and abstraction, would you put them both on one website?
My gut reaction is probably. My
I
follow-up
would.
question would be, how different is that art?
Different in a way they do. The plein air would inform the abstractions.
Okay,
And so that's how I explain that.
then absolutely it should be on the same, and they should be categorized on your site.
Right.
If you were going to tell me I do goth paintings of vampires, and I also do sculptures of flowers, it probably should be two sites. But in this case, yes, one site, two different categories.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm a big believer in one site. It makes life so much easier too. And I've worked with artists who have had like 3 different social media presences with 3 different websites, and they're driving themselves insane. Really, the more you can focus, the better. Barb, you had a good question too.
I have struggled with this for years. My artwork is intellectual, and I do some weird intellectual stuff, some of it for money, whatever. So, you know, I get hired by organizations to teach them complexity, and I do facilitation where I've created some unique exercises around how do we think. So it's very, very highly intellectual. And I would now, all but one of my businesses is on the same website. And I just go back and forth over, should it be separate websites? Should it be one website?
Interesting. It sounds to me, tell me if I'm wrong, it sounds like the audiences for your art site and this intellectual speaking site are very different.
Yes.
Okay. Then but on level they do speak to each other, right? Which is why you're asking. Yes. Also, by the way, congratulations on having a great background for yourself right now, because here you are talking and people are getting little peeks at your work. It's terrific. In this particular case, I would say 2 different websites because they're 2 very different audiences. However, because they sort of speak to each other, I would mention the other website on both with links.
Okay.
Great answer. Great answer. I think we've got more questions out there. I'm going to ask another question that was posted. Jillian said, I currently have, Jillian, are you here? There you are. Do you want to ask?
The first question or the second question that I posted?
Ask both.
Both.
Start with
Okay,
the first.
The first one was a little along the lines of Bob Siegel's. I do a mixture of art. I do art that looks abstract and art that looks highly intellectual and is kind of poking fun at politics and all kinds of things, but they're underpinned by the same underlying theme behind all my work, which is my dichotomy is an illusion. So I have that, but I also teach art, and so I facilitate that, and I also am a picture framer. And I have not ever put the picture framing or the teaching online, but I'm trying to build up those things so I can free myself from my part-time job. And so I need to know whether I need to build 2 other websites, or can I put them as separate pages or sections within my current website?
95% of what you just said, I have an answer to. It's the 5% I'm not sure about.
Okay.
So teaching art and your own art are absolutely related. So I would say they can be on the same site. The teaching art, which sounds like it's a fair amount of what you do, yes?
It hasn't been, it's been sporadic, but I'm trying to build a program where it will,
You're trying to make it more.
yeah.
Then that particular page where you talk about that needs to be very focused and designed towards that, because it is an important part of what you are doing and what you're selling. It should still visually speak to everything else, but that, when I talk about a primary audience and a secondary audience, our teaching sounds like it's a secondary audience, but it's not primary, secondary. It's, you got to look at me. I'm doing visual for you.
Yeah.
It's primary. It's not primary, secondary. It's primary, secondary. So
Okay.
it needs to be, almost like its own home page. In fact, when you're in a situation where you are wanting to tell people to go to your website regarding teaching, you want to be able to, you want to be able to send them to your website /teaching.
Yeah.
Because it in and of itself is almost its own homepage, if that makes sense.
Yep.
5% of what you said that I'm not sure about is framing. Is that just framing people's art in general? Or is it the framing of your art for sale?
Well, it's kind of both, because I worked as a picture framer at a place for 7 years. But partly I got into that because I wanted to frame my own work in a way that appeals to me. And framing's, it's always been expensive. Now it's extraordinarily expensive. And I do a style of framing that I wouldn't be able to afford if I had to buy it retail. And so I have a certain style that I like, and I try to find, because I'm an artist, I've gotten doing framing that really helps the art to sing.
I love that. You're doing an assist also. You're assisting their art to sing. I got it.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've taught workshops for artists on preparing ahead for the framing process, like teaching them, do not sign your watercolor painting right on the edge of the bottom of the painting because it will get clipped by the window mat. Stuff like that.
I love that. I love that. I bet a lot of people make that mistake.
Oh, yeah, you wouldn't believe it.
Oh, I'm on two minds of the framing thing. There's part of me that think, well, at the very least, if it was its own site, then you should have cross links to each other.
Okay.
I'm 50-50. Krista, what do you say?
I say one site.
Yeah, you're the one site person.
I am.
But then,
One-stop
like the
shop.
teaching part, would you have that framing be almost its own sort of homepage?
I think when you go to the web page, I would have like a gallery of where they want to go. Like, this is who I am. Are you interested in framing? Are you interested in workshops? Are you interested in my work?
On the home page? Okay. As links at the top in the navigation bar menu?
As a gallery, as
The
you know.
gallery. Oh, got it.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
got
what's
it,
the first
got it.
thing they're going to do? They're going to have to
Yep.
make a choice what they're interested in. So maybe some sort of statement that frames who you are.
Okay.
Rebuttal, Jason?
I like that. I'm going to add one thing to that you're probably thinking but didn't necessarily say. And that is, I really like the idea on the homepage being able to right away offer them a path. But I still think that hero image, that up the fold image, that homepage should be your art, even in all three of those things, I think it probably is the most important thing. Because when it comes to teaching art, that you're also an artist, very important. That you sell or educate people on framing, I would say it's not as important as the teaching thing, but I still think it's very important. You're an artist that knows about framing, which I think speaks to your framing ability. So I think that's.
At the moment, at the what's the word used for that? Above the fold. Above the fold, I currently have a slideshow that is not just pictures of the work, that it'll be, one of them's a picture of me standing in front of a piece. One of them's a picture of an installation at an art show of another type of work I do. They each have a little kind of very small letters, a little quote at the bottom if people choose to read it or not, because I like kind of pithy quotes. And that just cycles through a slideshow and one of the performance piece. It's got a performance piece.
I love it. I tell you why. Because it may not necessarily be for everybody, because it depends on what those pictures are that aren't just your art. In your case, it sounds like it makes a lot of sense. Overall, pictures of yourself on your site, I would say, is a good thing. Unless you're super uncomfortable with it and then don't feel like you're forced to. But in general, to show yourself as a human being on your website about art, about your art, which is an extremely human thing, I think is great. It will help people to connect on a human level to who you are, what your art is, blah, 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 blah. That you talked about showing you with an installation also ups your professionalism. You did an installation somewhere. Now, did you do it for free at someone's cafe down the street who's been your best friend since high school? Maybe, but your viewer doesn't necessarily need to know that. It shows that you did an installation somewhere, which it up-levels your professionalism, your credibility. At a gallery, same thing. At a gallery opening, absolutely. Here I am, my opening on this day, a month ago, or something like that. Especially if it was recent, you could put in there when it was. Caution: once that becomes old, take the date off of there. But in general, those types of things I think are great to me. Don't do too many of them. And I like that you said they're sporadic. So it's not like you here, you there, you doing this, you. It's you, some art, some more art again, da 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 da. That it again, that flow feels good to me. It doesn't feel like you're forcing anything on me. And I'm getting an impression about you and who you are and what your art is all at once, and it's just gliding by. So yes.
Yeah, I do curating as well. I've curated quite a few shows on the island I live on that have had, say, 4 or 5 other artists in them.
Great.
Where I put the show together and done all. I did graphic design too, so I've done the card for it and the posters and all that kind of thing. And a lot of those were very successful. I was really pleased with them.
Be very the pictures that you are choosing, and make sure that all of them either speak to your art or you and your art. So
Okay.
I wouldn't necessarily have a picture of you lecturing.
No.
Yes, lecturing, and you have a piece of your art up there also, because then you're starting to get into a muddled mind. That makes sense on this particular page.
Yeah. Okay.
No. Yeah.
Thank you. Very helpful.
Of course.
My other question was that I've been on. I mean, I did my first website. I think it was back in 1997 using tables, using a text editor, because that's what we had in those days, and it was a bit clunky. But the last several years, I've been using Weebly, which was fine at the beginning because all the emails that came through my domain name email address got channeled through to my email account through my internet provider. And then Weebly decided to do a deal with Google and forced everyone to go onto Gmail. So now I have 2 email accounts I have to keep checking, and it's a royal pain in the butt. And I'm wondering if there are other DIY website platforms like Weebly that don't do that, and whether I need to. I know my website anyway. Is it time to migrate something else?
Probably. So that last question. I am, and this is kind of self-serving, and I don't mean it to. I am not a huge fan of the DIY places for a lot of reasons. Actually, not necessarily the main reason, but I'll speak to the reason that you just brought up, and that is they change things up that can be beyond your control. And when it comes to the DIY places, that's likely to be more upsetting than it is. Like, for instance, a WordPress site, which can be a DIY place, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a DIY. You can hire somebody to build a WordPress site for you. And I actually would highly recommend WordPress over anything else. And WordPress does update their core thing twice, 3 times a month. And it might upset the cart a little bit, but I'll tell you what, they're very unlikely to make a huge deal with Facebook or Google or something that's going to greatly upset things. These other places are more likely to do that. The other problem with these places, if you are doing a DIY place like this, chances are you're going to be DIY. You're going to be doing it yourself. If you have somewhat of a technical savvy and something of a marketing brain, then go for it. It might work. I can say in general, it's hard to brand and market yourself. It's the forest for the trees kind of thing. I think way more often than not, you're better off hiring an outside professional that knows what you don't know to brand and market and produce for you. That also goes back to Chris's thing about the left brain and the right brain, because in this particular case, in a marketing space, you want someone that can think like that and do like that. You want someone that can think marketing and do marketing from a technological point of view. And then to go back to the stereotype of the starving artist, if you are doing DIY because you think it's cheaper, you're largely correct, but not 100% correct. My company and places will offer extremely affordable websites. In our case, it's a flat fee, $550 website. It's the Janet Scrow website that I showed earlier. It's one page. It's one core back image. We put a little foreground in there, and then we had sections. Sections for, in her case, it was bio, about, contact, and I think 2 different galleries. And those galleries aren't overwhelming. They were exemplary. They were portfolios. They were exemplary. That site was only $550. You go to a Wix or a Squarespace, chances are you're going to pay about the same and do it yourself. And chances are when you do it yourself site, it looks like you did it yourself. And that's going to buck your level of professionalism down in the eyes of the viewer and your credibility down a little bit. Then the other thing I have is a lot of people have a cousin. It seems to always be a cousin and not a brother or a sister. It always seems to be a cousin. I have a cousin who's learning web design. Great. 9 times out of 10, it's also going to look like you did it yourself. So that is my overview on the DIY sites. Oh, and as far as email goes, the DIY site places, they're going to want you to host with them, which is going to bump you up. And honestly, if you did a site with us and others, we're going to probably want you to host with our dedicated private server also. They're safer, they're faster, even in the case of Wixes and stuff. So I get that. It does make sense. But then when you get into the email thing, it can be upsetting like it was to you. And then emails are going here and then they're going there. If your domain name is with a place like GoDaddy, you can still host anywhere. But through GoDaddy or through a savvy web designer, you can get a Microsoft 365 email account, which also isn't perfect. And I think right now they're like $65 a year. But you'll have it, and if GoDaddy to change it, which they did to Microsoft 365 about a year ago, it's still the same email address. It's still the same. So you still own it. So you have to, I think, dig a little deeper when there are things important to you, like a customized email address, owning your own domain, keeping it from changing outside of your control, having somebody on your team that knows how to deal with those changes if and when they do happen. That all makes sense?
Yeah, I've had my own domain name since 1996. So
Good.
and I have
So do I, and I've renewed it 20 years out.
I make things always renewed, so no one takes it. I've got and I have it under .com, .net, .org, and I did the same for another one.
Yep.
Did.
I just had a client who allowed his domain to expire, even though I warned him. I said, this is what's going to happen. When it expires, you'll have X amount of days to redeem it. And because he didn't control the domains for a majority of my clients, so they're in my thing. And so a part of their maintenance package, I renew it for them every year automatically. His was outside. So I kept telling him, you got to do it, you got to do it. And then after a certain amount of time, the registrar will take offline and then they'll put it into what's called a redemption phase. The redemption phase can cost like $80 additional to renew it. And that can last like 90 days while your site's offline and you don't have your domain. And then it can come back and go to auction. And I usually tell somebody like this guy was bobsmithvoiceover.com. I said, chances are no one's going to want bobsmithvoiceover.com, so it'll be okay. And you won't have to auction for it. You can wait till it goes back to the main pool and get it. But guess what? It went to auction and some lottery company bought Bob Smith voiceover.com, and you go to his website now and it's just all in Chinese, and if you translate it, it's a way to buy Chinese lottery tickets. So that crap can happen. So own your own domain or have somebody you trust to own your own domain and renew it. If you don't renew it for multiple years out, then renew it at least a month early.
Great advice. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much. It's very helpful.
Sure.
Yeah. Hey, Joe Ray had a question.
Joe Ray.
Hi. So my question is email blasts, sending out dates, new exhibits are coming up, new work that you are announcing, right? Because part of it is engaging with your audience. So it's sending them out there. It's driving them to your site. Social media will only do so much. So obviously with a database, that's your goal. Those are your subscribers, right? So how often is too often? What's your opinion on your take on this? Because I get some stuff from artists, some non-artists that are like 2-3 times a week. Finally, I'm just like, unsubscribe me, man, just too much. And others you forget about and you get, oh, okay, what happened to them? And then there's a certain timeliness when things are too far apart that's missed. So I want, from the audience perspective, what's your take on on frequency?
Okay, first of all, I've known Joe for multiple decades, and I haven't seen you in a while, Joe. Why is it you haven't aged and I have? I'm very upset.
My hair's a little gray. Used to then the kids came along and
Yeah, that happened.
it wasn't great.
Okay, my answer to your question is not necessarily going to be a great one for you. And the answer is depends. Because I have clients in the art world and not in the art world that will as many as 2 or 3 times a week. And I have others that do it monthly and some that even only do it quarterly, and then some that don't do it at all. Should you do it? Yes, you do it. Should you have a list? Yes, you should have a list. Should you stay in touch with those people? Yes, you should. You should always be providing them with some sort of value. Those emails shouldn't be, I'm speaking to everybody, you may or may not already know this, but probably do. When you email somebody, you need to email them something of value. It's not like on social media when you post, oh, look, I'm here with my kids going water skiing. You don't want to email anybody about that. We all get inundated with emails. We all get spam and we all hate it. So here's why it depends. It depends on how loyal your email list is to you. How much do they not just like you and appreciate you and what you do, but like and appreciate what you send them in these emails? Part of that is measured by any sort of engagement. If you send them an email with a link that leads them to something, then hopefully you can track that in some way. How successful was that email? Like MailChimp will track that sort of thing. Most of them do. So you can track that, which is great. Those things will also track unsubscribes. You will almost always at least get a couple of unsubscribes. Don't let that scare you necessarily, unless you're getting a lot. If you are getting, again, it depends on the size and how often you do this. But if you are getting more than, I would say 10 to 15% unsubscribes on multiple email blasts that you send out, then I think that you probably want to measure this. You sent those, let's say you sent out 2 a week, 2 weeks in a row, and each time you had a similar unsubscribe. That's a bad sign. If you send out 2 a week over the course of 2 weeks and you had 10% unsubscribed the first time, but only 3% the next couple of times, then you know what? You probably just weeded out some people you didn't want in your list anyway. But if each time you do it and you're losing roughly the same amount of people, you now have a trend. So I would suggest, there's no rule of thumb. I would suggest slowing it down, trying to do it maybe once a week. How does that compare to what you did in the time before? If it's the same and you're losing a similar amount, then decrease it again till you get to a point that you feel that you're comfortable with. But you have to do it multiple times. So many people will do one, they'll lose 10%, they'll freak out and say, I'm not sending another one out for 6 months. I can't afford to lose another 10%. Well, guess what? That one time you sent it out could have just been a time where you're weeding out the people you didn't want on there anyway, or it could have just been a fluke. And you may have sent it out on a day, like certain days you shouldn't do it, like what do they call it? Black Friday. You know, times when people are already getting a crap ton of emails. Holiday season also. If you want to do something special for the holiday season, which a lot of artists might want to do it early. Don't wait to the last minute. So avoid those kind of things. But in general, you want to take a strategic mathematical mind to it. And that is, follow the trend, look at the data. And if you're using something like MailChimp, you should be able to see those things. Does that help?
Yes. Yeah, because I'm in the process of reading my site, and I was trying to looking back on. I haven't sent anything else since early spring. And I was looking back on what I had sent out, and because my site just kind of it's a WordPress site, and WordPress discontinued one of their themes, and sort of the site got all wonky, so we had to do some quick repair on it. So long story short, we're redoing it again, but it is in WordPress. And I was looking at, okay, how often am I going to send stuff out? Because it's like Krista says, send something of value, right? Give something, whether it's an insight to what it is that you do, a little bit of, it's a couple of tips here and there. So I'm plotting out in the calendar what I'm going to send out. And I was just kind of looking at going, okay, how often was I doing it? And before, looking back over the past year, and typically my blasts result in a sale or two, which is really good. I like that because I always have a call to action in there. People see it. And then, I connected to social media as well. So with the blog post, so like everything's interconnected there, and send things out like that. But I was just trying to I thought, okay, what's my frequency like? And I was just curious what yours was like, but that did help. And I'm with you there on the subscription. A lot of times you weed out people you don't need. More isn't necessarily better.
Yeah, and you don't know until you do it a couple of times. So my overall answer, again, one that everyone might not like, depends. I'm glad you brought up call to action though, because call to action is important in most any sort of engagement with your audience. You want what you want them to do, in a nice brand appropriate way.
Right.
Thank you.
And I suggest no more than one call to action in an email.
Absolutely.
Occasionally I'll have two, but it makes me really nervous when I have to do that. We're going to take Mary Beth's question and we're going to start wrapping up. Mary Beth, did you want to unmute yourself? Can I help? No, it looks like it's not working. Oh, there you are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. I knocked myself down there for a minute. So I guess my question is, I'm in the process of transitioning my work from one style to a different style, integrating what I do. I do street painting with pastels, and I also do abstract and watercolor on unusual surfaces, but they're quite different. So my question is, should I delete some of the older work on my website or maintain that and then create a new section on my website?
Let's see. How much how much equity do you have in your current website? Do you get a lot of visitors? Do you have a lot of interaction through it? Is it important to you?
No,
Work for you? Is it just kind of what I would call a website?
it's more of a showcase
A cobweb.
website, a cobweb. I'm much better about my social media posting. My website tends to get a little stale because I just am lazy about it, and I'm still trying to figure out where I'm going with this new phase. So the website, I'm not completely committed. I'd like to start over, basically. So.
All right, a couple things there. One, you said you would like to start over, and I think that how you feel about it is important, and how you feel about your previous work and your new work is also important. If you really are feeling like this is a new start, I would encourage you to embrace that on every level. And if your website is stale and probably not all that popular and people aren't engaging with it, then I think it makes it easier for you to have a new start. So I would keep the domain name. I would use the same domain name, because as little as you think that it might be known or popular out there, it probably has at least a little bit of value. So don't lose that.
Right.
And anyone that might return to it after having gone to it for so long or whatever, why change it? Unless the domain name itself speaks to that old art in some way, like your name pottery, and you're not doing pottery anymore, then you got to change it. But if it doesn't, then I would keep the domain and I would do a brand new site. I think that there's no reason not to, and I think it will feel good to you. And I think that energy in your mind and in your body and in your new site will likely translate to every other in all the other communication that you do. But get you excited
Yeah.
about it. Also, in general, with websites, I should throw this out there, and it does speak to search engine optimization to a certain degree, and that is bots. They call them search bots. Search bots love a website that they know is not stale. One way they know it's not stale is it gets visits. People visit it. It's clearly not stale, but it kind of has to receive enough visits for that bot to say, oh, that's not just random. That's a big deal. So what do you do to make it not stale? And that is you change it, you update it. If you have a portfolio, you take a piece out, you add a new piece. Even as simple as changing a few words in your biography or in your artist statement, that a bot doesn't know the difference. A bot just sees, oh, it's been updated. So it's important to those. And I also think to a certain degree, it's important to your mindset just to go and revisit your site every once in a while, every couple of months, maybe at the most, and just go, does this still look good? Do I still want to say it this way? Do I have anything to add? Do I still want this piece there? Just so you can keep it fresh in your mind, which keeps everything that you do fresh in your mind, if that makes sense.
We really need to wrap up. I see we're still getting a lot more questions. Should we bring Jason back another time? Yeah? I don't want to keep him too long this time, so I'm sorry for those of you whose questions we weren't able to answer. I did get one more question in the coaching group that I want to answer really quickly, and it was about someone from Chitra. She's got her website hosted on Weebly Pro, but hasn't had any sales, and was asking about web hosting on web hosting geared toward artists making sales. So that kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier about SEO. And the website that you build on is not going to be bringing you traffic. You have to bring traffic to the website. Now, there are online galleries like Fine Art America, for example, where you could post your work, and that's fine. My issue with them is that there's absolutely no branding, there's no sense of you. And also you are competing with over 1 million other artists, so you can really lose people very, very easily. You can't collect their email addresses and do the ethical bribe and engage with them. So it's not, it's a great thing to have. If you want to be part of Saatchi Art or Fine Art America, that's fine, but I still recommend you have your own website. And I'm just going to wrap up by saying that I designed my own website for years. I did it myself, and I used the templates, and it looked like templates. And it was awkward, and it didn't work in mobile phone. It didn't look good. It didn't feel good. Eventually, I learned how to code so that I could do my own website, and that was a nightmare. I wanted to throw my computer through the wall. Even learning how to code didn't really help. Finally, I went with a pro. And when I started working with a professional, my website looked more polished. I was able to prioritize my energy instead of all of, that a website can do with you. I had help with the technology and with the big decisions I had to make, and I had a lot more confidence in my site. So yes, you can always make your own website. There are lots of places out there to do that, but at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, do you want to, and is this the best use of your energy? So Jason, tell us more about how they can find you. And
I wanted to speak to your answer to that question, or to that,
Okay.
to that question real quick, and that is, and it goes back again to affordability and doing it yourself. And I mentioned that my company has a flat $550 site, which is not only better than nothing, that it's originally and uniquely designed, it's going to help you. And a great thing about websites, unlike a printed book, is once you've built it, you can change it. So like in a book, if there's a typo, oops, not until the next printing. With a website, you can change it, you can upgrade it, you can do more and more. So it's better to start small and go big rather than not start at all. And along those lines, again, to not be self-serving, it's not as easy to find somebody with the left brain, right brain connectivity to do your website that's affordable, but they are out there. You might have to dig a little deep. The two places that popped in our mind when Chris and I were talking yesterday were Fiverr and Upwork. Are places that you might be able to go and search and look for affordable web designers. Sometimes they're college kids that are getting their degrees, and you take a look at their portfolio and maybe they're somebody that could work for you. So they're out there if you dig for it. And I, again, encourage you to do that rather than trying to do it yourself in almost all situations. Also, the Philippines. 2 people on my staff are Filipinos, and they work at an incredibly low rate. And the beauty of it is they're not living in slum houses at that rate. It like $6, $7, $8 an hour is middle to upper class wages in the Philippines. So you can go to a place also called onlinejobs.p, and you might there's a cost to do that, but it's not that expensive. You can post for a job, and you can also search. You can search in there, maybe find a web designer. Then there's a cost to actually get to them, but again, far less than hiring somebody to do a $5,000 website. Although if you want a $5,000 website, I'm happy to do that for you too. So having said all of that, it's time for my call to action. If you are interested in my company doing a website for you, or you want to talk to me about branding, online, social media marketing, any of that stuff, you can contact me at these places. And because Krista is, how do I say oldest friend without making you sound old? My longest time friend, the friend I've known the longest in my life, and I love her. And I know that a lot of you at least like her, if not love her as well. I'm giving a 20% discount on web work for anybody that comes through Krista. Of course, you have to tell me that you did.
we don't count that for the 550 site, right?
Well, I was actually thinking about this morning, and thank you. I decided to go ahead and do it.
Wow. Okay. There
Yeah.
you go, guys.
So, and thanks for bringing that up, though. I decided, you know, what the heck, artists. And the truth is, when I came into the call, I wasn't going to do it, but I really enjoyed being with you guys. Like I said, I enjoy being with artists and working with artists. I feel good. And I thought, why not give people an extra $110?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you,
Thanks
guys.
everyone for your great questions. We could talk for hours, but we'll wrap it up here. We'll bring Jason back again another time, but you can reach him, Village Green Studios, and see you guys next month. Thanks so much. Take care.
So, bye.